And I took on the maximum amount of student loans every semester. And I work for the federal government, so as a result, my loans were forgiven.
How much debt did you pay off?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I had a total of $211,000. I paid off about $77,000, but I didn't do a good job at tracking interest, because it was I was new on the journey. So I didn't know to keep the detailed records of what I paid off, how quickly I paid it off, and so on and so forth. So I think it's actually closer to $80,000. So usually I just round 77 to 80,000 because why not?
Round up.
Exactly, right? But interesting story though. When I started, I only started with $189,000 in debt. Okay, so it's $50,000 in credit card debt, $134,000 or so in student loan debt. I had about $5,000 left on my car loan. And then, okay, because I started and stopped my debt payoff journey a number of times. And what I found when I was trying to use other tools that, people like Dave Ramsey will tell you, you don't go inside of a restaurant unless you work there kind of things.
Yep.
It was pretty restrictive. Exactly. And so I would start, make a little bit of progress, but then I would stop because I just felt so miserable. So this time around, I became serious. This was about September 2018. And I started with $189,000 that I knew of, but I hadn't filed. It's going to be sad. I don't want tell your audience, don't do this. Okay. I hadn't filed tax return for 2 years. So we're talking about 4 tax returns, 2 for state, 2 for federal, right? So I said, all right, well, if you're serious about getting out of this debt so that you can live the life you want, you can move, you don't have to worry about this overhead and you owing so many people money. You gotta face the music. You're gonna owe tax. You're gonna owe it, if not for penalties and interest, but you're definitely gonna owe, right?
Yeah.
So I hired a tax professional to help me with that. All right, so we file the tax returns, okay?
Yeah.
And so this is about, at this point, this is June, July-ish of 2019, all right? And the tax bills start coming in. Now I had paid about $16,000 off. I had paid off my car, was starting to make progress with credit card debt. And the tax bills came in and they totaled, I will never forget this number, $21,946.35. So hit me like a gut punch. It just, I knew I owed the debt. I knew I owed tax debt. I knew it was coming. But to see it, and it, in the language for some of these letters I got, especially from the state, it wasn't nice. It was, pay immediately kind of thing.
It wasn't, we regretfully informed.
No, of course, no, absolutely not. They wanted their money. And so it just caused, and at the time, I was new to my page. I'd started Debt Free Gonna Be just a few months before. And I was leaning into being vulnerable with them, but everyone was loving that I was making this progress, and they saw themselves in either me as a Black woman, me as a woman, or me as someone who's carrying 6-figure debt and making progress.
Okay, just so the listeners know, you started an Instagram page.
Sorry, yes,
to show,
yes.
Yeah, to show your progress as you're paying off this debt.
So Debt Free Gonna Be is my Instagram page, and it's called Debt Free Gonna Be. Just a little bit of backstory. It's called Debt Free Gonna Be as a declaration. When I was thinking about creating a page specifically for my debt payoff journey to just document it and hold me accountable, I was looking around in the debt-free community and I saw a lot of people saying, oh, I want to be debt-free. Or I even saw profile names saying debt-free wannabe. And I'm like, I don't want to be. I'm going to be. I'm gonna be. And so that's how I came up with Debt Free Gonna Be. So yeah, it started as a page to just track my journey. And we know that no one holds you accountable more than strangers on the internet, especially when it comes to money.
For some reason,
right? All in your business. But anyway, so I just started to share screenshots, share what I was budgeting. I would share meal prep inspiration and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so Instagram, Debt Free Gonna Be is my page.
And they were watching you make this progress starting off.
Absolutely. They were telling me how good it felt to have someone who was dealing with challenges and having to, it's hard when you have all these other financial responsibilities and you're also trying to tackle that. And for some people, they can't because they need more income. So that was something else that, we talked about along the way. I had some side hustles.
Yeah.
I did DoorDash. I did Instacart. It's just because the more money that you can throw at your debt, the more progress that you can make. And I think that was the thing that a lot of people were not becoming addicted to, but like, if I can do it, they see themselves in it. It's like, oh, I can do this if Nika's doing this. Like, okay, I'm going to try this out, right? And then the messages started coming like, oh, I called my credit card company and negotiated a lower interest rate, and that's going to help me pay down this balance. And so it was things like that. And that's when I realized like, oh, Debt-Free Gonna Be is shifting to be a resource, not just a like place for me to document my life, right?
Yeah.
So fast forwarding back to the tax debt.
So you get slapped with that. You were just making progress. Everyone's seeing your progress. And
I felt horrible because I'm like, I think at the time I had this envision that my progress is going to just be linear, but that's not life.
That's why we're making these podcasts.
Exactly. And so I struggled so much with whether to tell the truth about that tax debt. I dealt with a little bit of depression because of it, because it literally felt like a gut punch. It's like, is this the universe telling me I'm never going to get out of debt? Is this just some sign that this is not going to be the life that, like, I'm not going to achieve the life that I want? But then, I got myself into therapy and then talked to close friends, and they're like, Nika, it's just another debt.
Yep.
You treat it like another debt. So, I had laid out my debt in order of smallest balance to larger balance. So I did it's called the debt snowball. Mm-hmm. I had done that. And that gave me momentum in the very beginning because I was knocking out those smaller balances. Quick wins. And I'm definitely a quick win person, especially when I know I have a mountain of six-figure debt to tackle, right? Yeah. And so a close friend of mine said, it's just another debt. Work it into your plan. And I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? You're right. The immediate things that I had to take care of, like the state, said, oh, we won't, renew your registration and your parking and all that other stuff. I did a balance transfer for, and then just worked that credit card that I used the balance transfer for into my debt snowball plan. And so I just started tackling away at things. I gave myself the moment to feel sorry for myself, but then
that's okay,
right? Sometimes you have to. Like, I had to honor how I was feeling, and then I just started going at it again. And then about 2021, I paid off my last credit card. I also paid off that tax debt.
Oh, included. That must have felt nicer to tell your audience that.
Let me tell you, it felt amazing. And the reason why, my audience, they felt like they were happy for me. Like they were so inspired. They took action in their own lives, just watching me. Like I said, I would share, I got paid today and I threw $500 to whatever it was, tax debt or Discover or whatever. And they were a part of the story. They were a part of the journey as well. And so I always say, thank you for being a part of my journey, but letting me be a part of yours, because in some way we're transferring support, we're transferring knowledge with one another. And so, so then that left. So at the end of, 2021?
Yep.
No tax debt, no credit card debt. Car had been paid off.
There we go.
My student loans were left. $133,374 and some change.
All right, let's talk about that.
All right.
When did you go to school and what did you go to school for?
I'm not going to date myself like that, JC.
What year did you graduate? All right. Where did you go to school? Was it out of state? And what was it?
Okay. So I'm going to answer those questions. I have a little bit of backstory. Okay. So I'm first generation in my family to go to college and graduate. There was a lot of pressure to go to school. Even though they didn't say, you have to go, I felt this weight. I knew in some way I wanted to make my family proud.
We're in America.
You're
going to go to college. That's what you do.
Exactly. And so I went to college with no way to pay for it. So I had to take on student loans, like most people, because tuition, it's insane.
Yeah. People have that feeling like, I have no way to go to college. And it's also like, that's just with the assumption that you just have to go to college.
Yeah. And so when you don't have, your parents weren't able to save, you might not have exhausted all of the scholarships and grants that were out there, you take on debt. I mean, because you want to go. And so I did that, and I took on the maximum amount of student loans every semester, okay, to pay for school, but also to get some extra. Yes, I went to Bowie State University for undergrad. I went to Johns Hopkins for grad school.
Okay.
And every semester, I took the max out, got covered tuition and fees, got the refund check, and I have no idea what I spent it on. I didn't know how to manage my money at the time. And when you don't know how to manage your money, anytime a bill comes at you, you always think, oh, I don't have enough money for this. I can't pay it. And what most people do, including myself, is they avoid things. So even after graduating undergrad and grad school, because I still hadn't developed or acquired the tools that I have now, when the bill came due, I just said, oh, I'll just put the loans in forbearance.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't recognize is that when your loans are in forbearance, that interest continues to accrue, and student loans accrue interest differently than other debt.
Yep.
So when the interest accrues and that interest remains unpaid, it gets added on to the loan balance. So I didn't take out $130,000 in student loan debt. I accrued I don't know the exact number, but it's around $20,000 in interest alone, because I kept postponing my, they're like, oh, it's time for you to pay. And it's like, I don't have enough money, so just keep me in forbearance. And that's what I did.
So when you first started pulling those loans, was your mindset that you were going to pay them back?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, I'm not going to say that they market. No, it's understood that, like you said, you go to college, you get a good job, right? And so there's this false sense of guaranteed employment or guaranteed employment that whose wages will match the debt you come out of school with. That's not always the case. And so, yes, absolutely. Like, I am a very responsible person in which if I took money as a loan, I'm going to pay it back. Although I know there are some people who don't do that. But yes, I had the intention of paying it back. But again, everything was all in my head. I wasn't budgeting. So it just appeared like I didn't have enough money. And it wasn't until, I get into realizing, this is several years later, where I realized, okay, you make decent money. Why are you still you're coming up short, or you feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck? Like, you got to do something, because you can't keep living like this. Like, you don't need to live in struggle. Like, you don't, come on. Right. Like, so.
And we're out of college. I shouldn't be living like a college student.
I mean, exactly. Right. And so, so that's my student loan story. That's how I ended up with 6-figure student loan debt. It's the interest. And I'm happy that they're starting to do some things about it, but it's still absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. So what was it? What did you go to Johns Hopkins for?
No, I didn't go to medical school. I received a master's in biotechnology and regulatory affairs.
What was your first job out of college?
So I was working for a biotech company called MedImmune. It's in Maryland.
Are you still with that company today?
I am not. I am actually a public servant. I work for the federal government. I won't say the agency, but I'm in the federal government. And that's hold on, we're not done, JC, because my loans ended up, okay, so we know all that's left at the end of 2021 are my student loans.
Yep. You wiped out everything.
I wiped out everything other than the student loans. So we're talking $80,000. All right.
Yeah.
I paid off by myself.
That's
all right.
That's step up right there. That's good.
Okay. The Biden administration comes out with a public service loan forgiveness waiver in October 2021. And that waiver is basically going to give retroactive credit for payments that otherwise wouldn't qualify. So like I said, I work in public service, and at the time in 2021, I had been in public service for 11 years.
What does that mean? Retroactive?
Retroactive meaning, so in the public service loan forgiveness program, I try not to get too technical.
Yeah.
You have to be employed by a qualified employer. So it is an employer who would be considered a not-for-profit organization, okay?
Okay.
As long as you maintain that employment from that not-for-profit organization, you have to make a payment every month towards your student loans. And that payment, it has to be due, it has to be made 15 days after due date. There's all these rules.
Okay.
Well, there was another administration before the Biden administration that made it really hard for people who actually qualified for forgiveness under the public service loan forgiveness program to receive the forgiveness. So as a result, there are people who made these qualifying payments towards the payment requirements, and they were still stuck with this debt. The Biden administration comes along, they do the waiver, and they go back and look at people's accounts to see what periods of ineligible payments they had that with this one-time opportunity or limited opportunity, they could provide credit for those ineligible months. And as a result, and that's what I mean about retroactive credit. And so as a result, my loans were forgiven because I had been in public service for more than 10 years. That's one of the requirements, so that you have to make 100.
Very specific.
It's very specific. Yes, you have to make 100, the equivalent of 120 payments or 10 years. They don't have to be consecutive payments. And so because I had been in public service for more than 10 years and I had been in repayment for more than 10 years, my loans qualified for forgiveness. So towards the end of 2022, I started seeing zeros when I logged into my loan servicer. And then when I logged into the Department of Education, I saw your loans have been paid in full. And I'm like, wait, no, it's happening. And then in January of this year, I received the paid in full letter.
No.
And that made me 100% debt free.
You know, I've never heard or like met anyone where that's actually applied to them.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. And what's crazy is because I shared so much about my journey, and again, the content mirrored my journey as I was going through each step. I've helped my community get over $1 million in student loan cancellation just from sharing my journey and the information that I was learning about student loans and the relief efforts at play. So it's life-changing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having a six-figure debt hanging over your head for a degree that you got many moons ago? Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That is literally something that is only solved with like educating yourself.
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of people, including me, there's a lot of people who qualify for already established programs. I'm not talking about the new stuff Biden is trying to do. I'm talking about dedicating your career to public service, which means you're usually taking a pay cut. You know, teachers, there's teacher loan forgiveness. So a lot of people don't understand that there are government programs, and there are also repayment assistance programs at employers and at the state level. A lot of people don't understand that there are these things that they may apply for, because it gets confusing as to what applies to them and what doesn't, because there's so much information and it's not always delivered in a way that's easily understood. So Gotcha. So once I started digging and
read the small print.
I read the small print. I've almost read the entire Higher Education Act. Almost. Yeah.
And that's why you were invited to the White House.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Next time I'll meet Biden. Yeah.
My last thing though is to those college grads who don't apply for this forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
They have this student loan payment to pay off. What would you tell them?
Oh my goodness. Okay. First things first, you got to get on the budget. You have to, and just so that we're clear, a budget's not a list of bills. A budget's going to include your savings goals. It's going to include your investing goals and the things that matter to you. With a budget, it lets you know whether you need to cut things out or cut things back, or if you need to increase your income. And unfortunately, a lot of people are in a situation with their student loans where they actually need to generate more income. Doesn't necessarily mean you got to quit your job. It just may mean you need to ask for a raise or pursue a different role that may generate more income, or pick up a side hustle. So I definitely recommend people coming out of college, even if they're not, because payments are resuming for millions of people for the first time in over 3 years. Get on a budget. Then you realize what you need to do next. Cut things out, increase your income. I would also recommend people to get to know their loan servicer. Okay. Get to know their loan servicer. Get to know how the dashboard works with their loan servicer. Look at your loan details. Look at how much your servicer is saying is coming due. And if that doesn't work, contact them as soon as possible. Because what you don't want to do is kind of get in a situation where your payment's coming due, you can't afford it maybe, or you actually need a lower payment. Like you're capable of making student loan payments, but not that specific payment. Get in front of them, call them, chat with them, email with them as soon as possible, because you don't want to be late. You don't want to go default. Don't just avoid it, because I learned the hard way, avoidance doesn't solve anything. Yeah. So those are the two main things that I tell people to do when it comes to like resuming payments is like, listen, communicate early and often with your servicer. If there's an issue or you need a lower payment, contact them, but make sure you have a budget because then you know where you stand as far as financially and what you can actually afford.
100%.
Yeah.
And my final question, in the moments where you were not feeling as motivated,
Oh, gosh.
like you said, the path isn't linear. And in those dips,
Yeah.
what did you tell yourself, or who helped bring you back that energy? Like,
Yeah.
how did you motivate yourself in those moments?
I had, at the time, 20,000 people to help motivate me to come back every time because I knew they were expecting me to show up. But if you don't want to put your debt payoff journey on Instagram, like I totally get that because it is, there's a level of vulnerability that's there. I honestly would remind myself of why I started. I started because I actually wanted to get rid of those student loans at some point because I didn't know about the PSLF. I didn't know my loans were going to be forgiven. That was just all part of it. I was prepared to start tackling those student loans after I paid off my credit card.
That was the biggest balance in the debt snowball.
Exactly, right? And so just remember why you started. Is it the life that you want when you're not shackled to debt? You know, is it to be able to support other people? Is it to be able to, like, family members? Is it to have a family of your day, you know, of your own one day? Like, remember why you started. And usually that comes with a feeling, like, you know what it feels like to be in debt, right? But imagine what it feels like when you're in less or in no debt. So I would constantly, because you're right, motivation waxes and wanes, you know? It's all about discipline, right? And discipline is the thing that eventually carries you all the way through. And so I would constantly remind myself, like, Nika, you said you want to be able to do this. Like, I'm a huge baseball fan. I used to have half season tickets to the Washington Nationals. And I was like, okay, I want full season tickets, but you can't do that right now. Like, you got to get out of debt. And so it's just thinking about what your life would look like, what things you would be able to do, people you would be able to impact, charities you would be able to support when you're in less debt. So think of your why and remind yourself of that when you feel unmotivated. Another thing I would do is actually track my progress. So even though I was documenting it on social media, I had a graph that I would color in, or a chart that I would color in to keep visual representation on a daily basis of where I was and how far I had come, you know? And so it's not just looking back at that chart to see your progress, but looking at all the other charts that are in this binder that I've collected. And that stuff it gives you this, I don't want to get emotional, but it does. It gives you this boost of, like, I can do this. I can do hard things. And I have a track record that shows that I can do it. And honestly, the time is going to go by anyway. And you might as well make the best of it. So those are two really big things. A third thing, and I'll wrap that up, is just to budget for fun. That's one thing I absolutely had to do. If you think about it, you know, the more restrictive you are with anything, the less likely you are to be successful. Like, trigger warning, think about dieting. If you're on this really restrictive diet, there's no fun. You can't have pancakes for breakfast if you want, you know, things like that. Most people binge. And so they're not successful. And then they'll say, you see, this didn't work. And then they may give up.
Because they're thinking so much about what they can't do.
Exactly. And so even though some people think budgeting is restrictive and that you have to, you know, not have any fun, not go out to eat and things like that when you're tackling debt, you can actually, in your budget, create a small line item. You know, I had one for eating out because there would be friends that would want to go to happy hour. And I checked my budget and I said, okay, I got $30. I'll come, you know, or something like that. So I think budgeting for fun just helps to keep you motivated so that you don't feel like you're sacrificing everything in order to make progress in paying off debt.
Because we're not robots.
No, we're not at all. We're absolutely humans, and we want, you know, we like fellowship and we like experiences. And then there are free things to do also, regardless of whether you pay for it or not. It's just allocate space and time for something fun along the way. Yeah.
That's perfect. And my last thing about that, I'll add a fourth after just hearing you. I think getting a community around you is important. Like, you know, your 20,000 followers. Yeah. Although they're all like on your page, but they're all talking to each other.
They're all talking
as well.
They are. They really are.
Makes you feel a little less weird. You see all these other people.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, but I think it's important. Community is important. And like I said, it doesn't have to be Instagram. But I told people that I was close to, that I trusted, like, hey, I'm going to be tackling my debt. I'm going to be watching my money more closely. I would love your support with that. And so I am lucky that I had that community where, when someone called to say, hey, let's hang out, it's like, hey, instead of it being like this full-on dinner, like, hey, you just want to walk and get coffee? Like, cool. Okay, I can do a $3 coffee. Like, that's cool. Or they'd find coupons, or they'd propose things that are free. And so being able to have that, it also helped me when the tax debt came, because when I was thinking about giving up, I had friends that I could say, I feel like this. What would you do? And it's, hey, you know what it feels like to be broken in debt. So no, you're going to keep moving. So yeah, if you can't find an accountability partner or support, within your immediate space, there are communities on social media, there are meetup groups, there's Facebook pages. Community is out there. It really is. And so I definitely recommend people surround themselves with like-minded people that can support them along the way.
Perfect.
Yeah.
With that, it's a good segue. Make sure to subscribe so you have this community.
Absolutely.
At the wrap, thank you so much.
JP.